Look, as much as I wanted to make another video about agents and all of the cool, fun things they can do, because we did put like 12 new ones in the platform on the Discover community page over the weekend, so go check those out. I think it's more important to start the week off by taking a step back and covering some of the basics, which is why we're going to look at the chat. I've never really made a video about one of the coolest features and most helpful features on Hatz, which is branched chatting. It's kind of like time travel. You can go back in time and say, what if I asked this question to a different LLM? What if I prompted it differently? What if I gave an entirely different scenario to GPT-5 instead of GPT-4o? Well, branched chatting lets you do that, and it lets you pick up at different points of the conversation depending on how you want to move forward. So let's take a look. I can start a conversation in Claude 4.5 Sonnet, just a brand new chat, nothing enabled, no tools or anything. I'm going to say, can you tell me what natural language processing is? Hopefully a pretty basic question for a more advanced LLM. There we go. Really quick, short answer. I didn't need to do a ton of reasoning beforehand. But if I scroll back up, this is what I'm talking about time travel, right? If I had, at this moment, before I pressed enter, if I had done something differently, I can click on this little edit button. I say, wait, I actually wanted to ask GPT-5 this question. Well, I can do that. And I'm going to send it off, switch to GPT-5. What's really cool about this in Hatz is that you can switch to a completely different developer. So I can move from Anthropic to OpenAI to Google to DeepSeek and just keep going without having to start a new chat. This is all in the same chat history. So I now have this 2 out of 2 up here because here's my answer from GPT-5. So I can switch back and forth and say, I wonder which one I like better. So there's almost an element of A/B testing here where you can say, gosh, there's 50 models here. There's 50 LLMs. I don't know which one to pick. When you start a new chat, there are 50 models that you can choose from. Well, they're not all equal. They're not all exactly the same. So this is a good way for you and all of the people at your company to get familiar with different models really quickly without creating 50 new chats. You can just start a new branch in a conversation. And from there, you can continue the conversation. Let's say I ask one more model. Let's switch to Gemini 2.5 Pro, and we'll send it off. Now it turns into 3 out of 3 because there are 3 different parts to this conversation that are happening. So here's my answer from Gemini 2.5 Pro. Now you notice down here in the bottom, I can continue this conversation in 2.5 Pro. So we can continue and it'll pick up the conversation down here. Why does that matter? Why does it matter that I can change it at the bottom and up at the top? Well, I started this conversation in Claude 4.5 Sonnet. And I moved over to GPT-5, and then I moved over to Gemini 2.5 Pro. At the bottom, it keeps the Gemini 2.5 Pro, which is just the most recent model that I've selected. And I can continue to have that conversation. I said, explain it like I'm 5, because looking up at this, it's still a bit technical. There's still some things, it's a longer response. I just want a really basic answer there, much more basic answer. But now I want to switch back to Claude 4.5 Sonnet because I don't like the formatting here, whatever. I want to switch to maybe a model that does image generation, like a Nano Banana. I want to switch to a reasoning model. Well, I can do that. I can switch to a different model. Let's just pick Amazon Nova Micro. And I'll say, give me another example of this. Extremely fast response here. So being able to change and split off at multiple different points, think of it truly as branches of a tree or roots of a tree, and you can just keep going and going and going and splitting down and branching off. You can just keep going and going with these branches. And I can go back up here and split off into another one that's Claude 4.5 Sonnet again and send it. And so now I have a branch that branches off into another branch. Use this branched chatting feature to familiarize yourself with different LLMs, different AI models on Hatz, so that you can figure out which ones you prefer for certain use cases or certain types of conversations over others. 50 models is a lot to look at all at once, but you can look at multiple models in the same conversation. When you're building agents, when you're building workflows, right, we give you the option to select a different model for each step of the workflow. And one of the most frequent questions we get is, which one should I use for what? There's some guidance in our documentation, but a lot of it at the end of the day comes down to personal preference. For, say, the vast majority of use cases for small, medium-sized businesses, it really is going to come down to personal preference, right? You're dealing with things that are formatting differences, you're dealing with speed differences, and it might vary from person to person, even in the same department. So check out branch chatting, start some new conversations, and as always, let us know what you'd like to see in the next video. Because Halloween is coming up on Friday, we have some extra spooky use cases and videos coming out over the next couple of days, so stay tuned for those. But drop your thoughts in the comments, let us know what you'd like to see, and we'll see you in the next one. Happy prompting.